Good morning, folks, and welcome to my fourth session on tackling RC passages and verbal ability in management exams. This is part of the overall Let's Crack Management Exams with Unacademy, which is India's largest learning platform. My name is Achyut Gupta, and I am a 2018 graduate from XLRI. Uh, during my time at XLRI, I won more than 8 national level case study competitions, and I am currently working in an HR strategy designing role for a startup. And my verbal scores were as follows: in CAT, I had 99.8 percentile. In XAT, I had 99 percentile, and in GMAT, my raw score was 42, which roughly translated to a worldwide score of 99 percentile among the people who wrote GMAT for that particular year. And I have teaching experience with an NGO where I taught in orphanages, and I used to teach primarily English. And I'm also currently a verbal faculty with Unacademy, but I also take sessions on decision making for ZAT as well as other aspect of B school admission such as GDPI VAT, selecting B schools, and things like that. Right. So those of you who are planning to join Unacademy subscription, I would say that our 12 months plan and our 24 months plan would work out to be the cheapest for you. Because if you see on a month-wise cost basis, the 12 months and the 24 months plan would be the cheapest for you because they work out to just 1,300 per month and 780 rupees per month, which is less than the money that we spend on a large visa. And also, if you are planning to buy a subscription, please you can use my code Achyut. It will get you 10% off, and you can give share the code with your friends or family members who might be planning to join an academy subscription for different exams such as NEET, UGC. The code will be valid for all of them, and they can also get 10% off. So please do share my code Achyut. That's the one at the bottom of the screen. Right. So, for those of you who are joining in for the first time, those who have not seen my previous videos, I'll just reiterate the importance of the verbal section in English for because some of you might be writing an MBA exam for the first time in your life. So the thing is, the verbal section is a very important part of scoring well in any management exam. In fact, I would say it was my verbal score in CAT that brought up my overall score. And in terms of the split of the marks and the questions, typically in CAT, there are total 100 questions, out of which 34 questions are for verbal. So that means out of a 300 marks paper, 102 marks would be for verbal. And in ZAT, which is a 75 question paper, about 26 questions are for verbal. So that means 26 marks out of 75 will be for verbal. Similarly, IFT, it again is a 100 marks question paper, and 35 questions will be from verbal. So that means 105 marks out of 300 is for verbal. And typically in all the management exams, RC passages form 2/3 of the total verbal section, and the verbal ability forms the remaining 1/3 aspect. So what I want you guys to do is, in my classes, I'll typically show you how to approach the level of questions that you see in the actual papers, how I used to approach it, how typically people, during the exams approach it. Based on that thought process, what I want you guys to do post my classes is I want you to do practice tests that are there on Unacademy's app, or if you have any other book, please do practice questions based on the learnings on how to solve the questions in class. I expect that you guys do as much practice as you can based on the learnings from it. Only then you will improve. If you just come to the classes and just see how I'm solving questions, that will not be enough. Learning plus practice has to go hand in hand. So please guys, post the classes, I urge you, try to practice as much as you can based on the thought process that you learn here on how to approach these questions. Right? Now, all right, let's move on. So now this time I thought let's start with a very interesting RC that came in that paper. Typically RC passages are this 800 word behemoths. You've got 3-4 paragraphs of intense information and all that. But that had a very interesting RC this year. It was based on a very famous poem. Uh, so I thought let's start with this. This gives a very unique take on the kind of RC that you can expect, because we are typically used to those word heavy verbose RC. So let's look at this one example from the ZAT 2020 paper. So it's a very small poem. Let's just quickly go through it, right? It says, some say the world will end in, sorry, I'm so sorry. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold it with those who favor fire. But if I had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to know that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. It's a very short and sweet poem. We know there's something about fire, ice, and world destruction, right? So let's see. Now, the reason why this particular RC is interesting is typically in most of the RCs that we get in CAT and XAT, where there are factual based RCs, historical based RCs, business based RCs, science and tech based RCs, the questions are mostly factually based in terms of you're either deducing information from the passage or you are extrapolating from the passage or you're just matching the options from the passage to the questions. But when you come to a poem like RC, the the difficulty of answering question goes up slightly because in this case you're trying to interpret what the author of the poem is trying to say. The difficulty of such a RC passage, I would say, is similar to the difficulty that we have in the philosophical RC passages. Because if you remember the philosophical RC passages that we did in one of our earlier classes, we had to interpret what was the author's thoughts, what was his understanding. We have to try to understand the author's, thought process. The same thing has to be done in this particular RC where we have a poem. You have to try to understand what is the thought process of the author. That's why it's very interesting. On the other hand, it is easier to read than the philosophical RCs, which are very long. So let's look at the questions now, right? The first is, which of the following statements will the poet agree with the most? Now, this means you have to understand what is the thought process of the poet in the poem. So, once you understand that, you can see that, okay, this particular option he will agree with the most. Okay. So, as always, as I've always said, quickly remember the answer options with one or two keywords and then read the RC passage, right? So, let's see what the answer options are. The first is greed can destroy the world. Second is desire can create self-doubt. Fourth is hatred destroys what desire cannot. D, desire overpowers hatred to control humans, and ambition is more powerful than envy. Okay. Now, the thing is, now that you have a rough idea of what the options are, I'll quickly go back to the poem. Okay. Now, I'll of course explain it, but first I want you guys to go through the poem and try to figure out what do you think is the meaning. Okay. So it's a very small poem. Just you got 30 seconds. Just try to understand. It's very straightforward. Try to understand what. See, poems are slightly philosophical in nature. So don't go with just exact words. Okay. But try to understand what could be the possible thought process and the meaning behind this poem. Okay. So I'll give you another just 10-15 seconds. Just go through the poem briefly and try to get the gist of it. Right. And then we'll again go back to the answer options. Try to understand what the author is trying to say here. Okay. Cool. So I'm guessing you guys must have gone through the poem. Okay. Now let's go back to the answer options. Now, based on what you understood out of the poem, right, or what the author is trying to say, what do you guys think that the author will agree with the most out of these the options? Now, please understand it is saying the most. So there might be multiple options where you think the author will agree with, agree with the points, but you have to find which one he or she would agree with more. Okay. So please vote, guys, from the answer bar on the right side. Please remember which one he or she would agree with the most. That's an important point. As I've always said, read carefully what the question is trying to ask. So you might have 2-3 options where you get confused, but which one would the author agree with more than one where the author would agree more than the other point, right? Okay, interesting. So we have 20% A, 10% B, 40% C, 20% D, and 10% E. Sorry, so some more votes came for A. So 27% A, 9% B, 36% C. All right. Now, so let's go over I'll just quickly go over the poem. It's very short, so I think it's quite straightforward and understandable, nothing complicated. Some say the world will end in fire and some say nice. So basically he's talking, he or she, I'm sorry guys if I switch to he, I don't want to be gender, like I don't know if the author is he or she. So let's take a gender neutral. The author is saying that the world will end in fire and some say nice. So there's a difference in opinion. Some group of people think the world will end in something fire. Fire is a metaphor for something clearly, but we don't know what it is. And some say nice. So we know there's a difference in opinion. Straightforward. Cool. From what I have tasted of desire. So what now the author refers to his or her own experiences and says that what the author has tasted, what the author has experienced in terms of desire, that is why the author favors the opinion of the people who think the world will end in fire. So that means you can see that the metaphor fire is somewhat related to desire, in the same category, in the same thought process, or in the same type of emotions. Desire is not what you might call a good emotion. I mean, it's not exactly bad also, but it's something that leads to confused thought process, right? When you're desiring someone or something, your thought process gets confused, you get warm, your skin gets flushed, right? You experience that, right? So that way you can understand that when they say the world will end in fire, they're talking about a type of emotions similar to desire, right? So that's a first clue of what the metaphors are for fire and ice, right? Then, but if it had to perish twice, now it refers to the world. So it's saying that if the world had to die twice, then the author knows enough of hate to know that for destruction, ice is also great. So now you have a clue that the other part where they say end in ice is something similar to destruction. So now you have the understanding of both the metaphors that were mentioned in the poem. You have the fire and the ice. So fire refers to the type of emotions such as desire and things like that, and then ice refers to something to the gamut of emotions such as or actions such as destruction, right? I'm so sorry. Emotions such as hate, right? So you have an understanding hate and desire. Hate is the fire, sorry, ice, and desire is the fire. Okay. Ice is also great and would suffice. So we know that both of these things would be enough. So you have a rough understanding of what the poem is about. See, in this case, I've not used any superfluous understanding. I've taken understanding based on what the poem is giving you, right? Now, let's see which of the options would closely match with what has been described there, right? We have, uh, right? So we have A that says, greed can destroy one's world. B, both desire and hate can create self-doubt. Now, the okay, C says hatred desires what desire cannot. D says desire overpowers hatred to control humans, and ambition is more powerful than envy. Now, the thing is, we are talking about destruction of something. Okay, that says world, but it might be a metaphor for something else. It says about destruction of something based on these two emotions. That's a basic understanding we have. So Brijesh didn't understand, I think. So Brijesh, when if you see the poem, okay, it is talking about emotions leading to destruction of certain things, right? You've got hate, you've got desire, right? So we have to see. So the author would definitely agree that emotions would lead to destruction, right? Now, which of these options matches roughly with that idea? Okay, greed can destroy one's world. Somewhat similar that yes, if you have too much of greed, your own world gets destroyed. Yes, fair enough. Desire and hate can create self-doubt. It's a very soft sounding option if you think about it, right? On one hand, he's saying, destroying the world. So the author is definitely saying that these emotions lead to big things happening, big negative things happening to you. So we can clearly eliminate B, right? C says hatred desires what desire cannot. Okay, again, there's some talk of destruction being here, or heavy based damage, if you will. So C also seems like a possible option. So let's keep A and C aside. D says desire overpowers hatred to control humans. Is that any